I've just given you the cheat sheet for above and below the line communication. Hang this somewhere, put it somewhere nearby. And what's really, really helpful about this tool in any given moment, even right now, you can ask yourself, where am I? Location, location, location. Where am I in this now moment? Not only related to my communication, but even in the way that I'm thinking. All right? Am I above or below the line? Where are we most of the time? Below the line. Why are we mostly below the line? Does anyone remember? It's our natural inclination. Yeah. Fight, flight. What's the third option? Freeze. Did you know there's a fourth option? We have flight, fight, flight, freeze, and fawn. I mean, I'm just going to tell you whatever I think it is that you need to hear so that I can survive or get what I want, right? These are stress response. Whenever I'm in stress response, I'm below the line. In other words, the quick way to assess yourself is to ask, whenever you're feeling ill at ease, whenever you're feeling out of peace, you're below the line, or you're about to go below the line. So as often as possible, we want to catch ourselves, bring ourselves above the line. If we know we're coming into a difficult situation or conversation, we want to check ourselves and as much as possible prepare to go above the line. I want to start out in a positive way today before we review above and below the line communication by going above the line. What does it look like? These three issues are really, really important. In a nutshell, when I am above the line, I arrive to my relationships, to my situations open. Meaning, even if there's conflict, I arrive open to learning that maybe I'm wrong, to learning that maybe there's a different pathway to where it is that we want to go. That I am open to having my mind changed. Think about the kind of ease you would experience if you entered into a potentially conflictual conversation from this place of, I don't really know what the outcome of this is going to be. And I'm not going to try to control it or manipulate it. I'm not going to try to win. I'm going to try to connect. So above the line is about openness. Above the line is about curiosity. The best story I can tell you about what it means to be curious in a difficult moment in our lives and in our workplace comes from a colleague of mine, trained university professor whom for a period of time took a job at Lehigh Valley Hospital as a medical educator. His job was to work with surgeons and doctors in having better patient-doctor communication. Now you can imagine how well this went over. This was mandated training for all surgeons and doctors in the system, and it had to occur outside of work hours. So the biggest problem he had were MDs getting really, really close to his face saying, what is a PhD going to teach me about communicating? That was the climate that he was walking into. He was there about 3 to 5 years, and it was about year 3 when he came up with a really important and significant coping strategy. And he said, something inspired me in the moment of being in the presence of a surgeon who was just enraged. Something compelled me to move from a state of being furious with that surgeon to being curious about that surgeon. And he always used this gesture. So in the moment of having fury in front of me, I would kind of step back and go into curiosity. Oh, isn't this interesting? What's going on with this person? Remember the 5 S's? Running yourself through the 5 S's. Is this person's security being threatened right now in this moment? Do they not feel supported? Or the human needs that we went over last time? Like, what is behind this level of furiousness? And as soon as I move into curiosity, as opposed to meeting someone where they're at, because remember, we said that's what we'll do energetically. If someone is below the line and communicating with me below the line, my tendency is I'm going to go there. Energy will match energy. I want to, in all of my affairs, to the degree that I can, operate in a way where I'm bringing others above the line. And part of how you do that is, in the moment of being triggered, step into a state of curiosity. Wow. A curiosity about yourself. I feel I'm being triggered here. This is kind of interesting. Curiosity about the other person. What's really going on here? Above the line is to be open, curious, and committed to growth and learning, always. Above the line, when I am above the line, I am in what we call growth mindset. It's nice to see you. Growth mindset, as opposed to fixed mindset. Fixed mindset is always thinking about things in the same way. Fixed mindset is imagining that you can't grow and change in various areas of your life. Fixed mindset is operating your life from a place of low emotional intelligence. Growth mindset is every opportunity, every failure, every success. Every irritation, every trigger, every moment of reactivity is a lesson, is a moment for me to learn. So when I'm open, curious, committed to growth and learning, life feels a lot lighter. Remember the imagery associated with what it means to live above the line. It's playful, it's light, it's growth, it's evolving, as opposed to the energy of being below the line. Above the line communication, know this for your teams. Creativity, collaboration, connection, and innovation thrive when you are a leader that lives above the line and communicates above the line. Imagine leading a team where creativity, collaboration, strong connection, and innovation is not the exception but the rule. None of these things are possible. None of these things are possible in a team dynamic where there is fear, threat, belittling, hostility, stress, or a poor climate. We talked about climate in our first session. None of these things are possible. Remember the image of the wilting basil plant? Will your team survive if you're operating below the line? Yes. Will you thrive? Never. And that's why we're here. We're no longer interested in surviving our team life. We're interested in thriving in our team life. Remember these 3 C's in the I. These should be present in your groups and teams, not on rare occasions, but all the time. Creativity, collaboration, connection, and innovation, because that is how you push an organization forward. And if we look at this organization as a very large team, it is the responsibility of the leaders of the organization to stay above the line so that creativity, collaboration, connection, or innovation are present here, or this organization will not move forward. Now, obviously, you're doing a good job at this because of where you're at compared to where you were how many years ago?
26. Too long.
So unknowingly, without having, the language or the terminology, right? You're doing a lot of this, but now we want to take this to the team level, to this micro level. If I were leading a group or team here, I would want to even take it lower than that. I would want to take it into the interpersonal level, because I'm sure that each of you in many ways. You're leading your group or team, but I'm assuming that you also have to have these really important one-on-one interpersonal encounters. I want for you to surpass your own potential as a leader, as a manager, and I want your group and team to surpass its potential, to surpass expectations. Wow, you can do that if you're operating above the line. So pretty specifically, above the line communication is going to be communication that is supportive, communication that is inclusive, communication that is rooted in curiosity, not fear or threat. It is very direct and it is very intentional. And these were aspects of communication that came forth in our first training together, which was really about how do I create a group climate that people want to spend time in. So if you want to check yourself, and this is in your handout, as a team leader, you want to ask yourself, am I contributing in positive ways to the communication here being inclusive, rooted in curiosity, supportive, direct, and intentional? You check yourself first. And then you worry about what's happening in your dynamic. You must walk this talk if you want to stay above the line. Very specifically, how often do you and are your team members offering each other words of support and affirmation? Kindness. How often is your communication, you with your team members and collectively in the team dynamic, authentic? That you're not faking it. How often is it based in dialogue as opposed to my directing you, my telling you what to do, what you need to do? In other words, are your projects, your team projects, are your goals and tasks collaborative? Are you moving forward in partnership with your leader, as opposed to the leader who comes in and sort of dictates what has to be done, what has to be accomplished, and your team members follow? How open are you not only to having team members ask you questions? How open is the team to asking questions about what they're working on? Knowing that more often than not, it's not the answers that are important. It is the process of continually asking new and interesting questions. The moment an organization stops asking new and interesting questions about what they're aiming to do is the moment that that organization begins to get stuck and really stagnate in its growth and development. Do you encourage in your groups and teams courageous expression? We talked about transparency, how important it is to encourage an atmosphere where I can be really transparent about what I'm thinking and feeling, so that we can, again, keep the team engaged in activity that's rooted in momentum. Engaging in lots of meta talk. Do you remember what meta talk means? What is it? Talk about the talk. When was the last time our team had a really honest conversation about how we relate to each other? It's that higher order communication. You're communicating all the time, but we're rarely communicating about how we're communicating. This is a game changer. Individuals who live above the line are not afraid to engage in meta talk. I might not like what I'm hearing as a team leader if I encourage my team members to engage in meta talk, but I'm going to learn a lot. And it's really about setting the optimal climate as the group or team leader, setting the optimal climate in this group or team that we can move well beyond our own expectations. That's a team that thrives. It comes back to this choice. I began this training with this slide. It's been present with us along the entire journey. So where you're at in your group or team because you've communicated yourselves into that place. If your team feels like the wilted basil plant, this can be remedied. With proper nurturance, we can bring this back to life. We can have it thrive. Or we continue to slog along, arrive to work each day feeling like we just have to survive through this. And this is the general energy. All right? Now, that's the energy of above the line communication, right? I want to review below the line because this is where we ended last time, right? Below the line communication is closed. It's defensive. I need to be right. It's my way or the highway. Now I can show up as, I'm such a believer in collaboration and cooperation and connection. I love these ideas. And yet, communicate with my team members in such a way that they get the message. He or she doesn't really mean that. It's his way or the highway. She needs to be right. We only wish we could be that group or team that lived above the line. Be mindful. Be mindful of aggression and hostility that's happening in your team, amongst team members. Be mindful of communication that's unsupportive. Be mindful of communication that is diminishing, invalidating, belittling. Remember, last time I said it's so painful to be in a moment, whether it's in a family, in a group of friends, or in a group or team in your workplace, when you see one team member address another team member in a way that is diminishing and you literally observe that team member shrinking. You can see them getting small. If you've ever been addressed that way, you know what I'm talking about. It's that moment when suddenly I feel small. It's very damaging and very toxic in teams for that to be present. Very common team group behavior, this is common because we're human beings, is certain team members establishing cliques. Some of the most important conversations happen in the parking lot after the team meeting, when 3 of the 5 team members get together. And oftentimes, whatever it is that they're saying or complaining about would be highly useful for the entire team to know. Now, that's not to say that you can't have little independent friendships with these people who are on your group or team, but be very careful about the way that those cliques then impact the entire dynamic. Very normal for this to happen. What we want to watch out for is the way that that exclusivity starts to pour over into the actual dynamic, because that needs to be managed very well. Beware of communication that is threatening, name calling, gossip. Lots and lots and lots of research about gossip and the toxicity of gossip in any workplace culture, let alone a group or team. Does anyone know why people tend to gossip? Again, it is a human phenomenon. It is a style of communication that has a particular purpose, or we wouldn't do it.
To make yourself feel better?
Sometimes, sometimes I will gossip to make myself feel better. What else?
Stress relief?
It can be a form of venting. Yeah.
Reflecting.
Yeah.
Fun.
That's great. Yeah, it can be fun. Did you know that gossiping is one of the key and central ways that people bond? Yeah. It's a bonding strategy that's not threatening. So be very careful be very careful when you find yourself gossiping, especially if it's with someone that you just met or you don't know very well. And the degree to which the gossip is going to be the foundation of your first point of connection. Just be careful of that. Just notice that. And if you have children or teens, also notice that. Their tendency to do that as a form of interpersonal bonding. Again, it's very natural. It's very natural. But that doesn't mean that it's productive. And if it's rampant in an organization, it's toxic. If it's rampant in a group or team, it's toxic to that group or team's productivity and effectiveness. Cruel humor, below the line. Blaming, shaming, creating guilt. Anything that attacks or undermines the dignity of another person is below the line. This is where we ended last time, I like to think about below the line communication as communication that happens below the belt. We have that phrase, don't hit below the belt. Don't hit below the belt. So whenever communication is B, belittling, E, explosive, overly aggressive, rageful. I work in organizations where senior level executives are explosive. It's incredibly toxic to the entire organization. This is very common, by the way. But if that person could know, if they really could understand how that thwarts incredible potential and possibility for that organization, if they could really know that, they would never do it again. It's that disruptive. Does anyone remember what I meant by labeling? I mentioned this last time. It's a very toxic form of communicating. Labeling is, you're so lazy. You're sick all the time. You never finish projects. You're always late. Labeling are definitive comments. They are comments that label the person in a particular way. We are never all of these things all of the time. There's many times when I'm lazy, when I'm not on time, when I drop the ball on projects, but that does not define who I am. So you want to avoid ways of speaking and communicating that define a person in a certain way, because as soon as I define you that way and other people hear me labeling you that way, that is how they then begin to see you. And over time, it can become the way that you see yourself. And then, of course, threatening. So that's BELT, below the belt. That's an acronym that I created. If you want to very, very quickly fast track into what it means to be below the line in your communication, remember the BELT acronym. That's all you need to know. If this is happening in your group or team, you want to note that it is unacceptable. Should be intolerable. It is completely damaging to the life of your group or team. Therefore, it is damaging to this entire organization, and it's something that you want to be uncompromising about. And I would recommend, if you're leading a team, that you watch that video 10 times. It's about 3 minutes. Watch it often and get very familiar with what above and below the line communication looks like, what it sounds like. That handout that I gave you, that's your cheat sheet, is completely aligned with the video. So it's a way of training yourself so that when you're in a moment, you can start using the language and the vocabulary of these trainings. And you can call each other out. Candy, you know what? I just wanted to say that in our meeting earlier, I really felt like you went below the line with me when you said such and such. And I value the work that we do together, and I value team life, and I just wanted to share that. How would you feel if I said that to you as a colleague?
I say, thanks, let me buy you a drink.
There's a way, and it's not part of this training, but there is a way, and I just did a version of that, where you can call someone out. You can have a difficult conversation that completely diminishes that person feeling threatened. Now, if I said, you were so below the line with me, I can't even believe what you said. Don't ever do that again. You made me feel ashamed and guilty and diminished.
Then I say, you need to go have a drink.
That's not helpful. That's actually, though, reflects the reality of the situation. That's how most people talk to each other when they feel like someone has gone below the line with them. Okay. All right. So I wanted to start with above the line because I wanted to demonstrate that it carries a very different energy. Remember in the video, above the line, the person who was drawing the images started using colored pencils and markers. It was colorful. It was alive. It really demonstrates that I'm going to grow as a person. Our relationship is going to grow together. Our team is going to grow and thrive. This organization is going to grow and thrive if above the line communication is not the exception, but the rule. So, a little assessment here. As a group or team, are we thriving? You want to ask yourself these questions, and you want to ask these questions of your group or team. Take these back to your groups and teams. I really want to acknowledge in a very powerful way how thrilling it's been for me to arrive here at 1:30 each time I come in for this training, and to have several of you share with me what you have actually used since I last saw you. Someone told me today that they started using the S's, the 5 S's, and how that's completely started to change the culture and climate of their team. So this is meant not just for you to hear and to internalize, this is meant for you to go back and teach. So this is a nice tool for assessing, are we thriving, right? Asking the question, what do we need to improve upon together? What do we need to change? Is there anything here that we should reevaluate? Not only in terms of the work that we're doing as a team, but who we are as a team. And know, what do I have under this question? What do I need to improve upon, change, reevaluate? Don't lead your group members through any exercise like this if you have not first asked this of yourself. What next best steps do we need to take? What next best steps do I need to take? Several of you have already started taking them by using this content. This is for you to use. How do we know we're thriving? What are markers for success? These are really important. Pride. You go all the way back to training number 1. Pride was identified as a key need of all groups and teams. And you want to ask yourself as a group team member, and ask of your group team members, am I proud to be on this team? Am I proud of the work that we're doing together? If you have group or team members that do not take pride in the work that you are all doing together, your team is going to suffer. You're going to end up in a ditch. You're going to end up stuck or stagnant. If I'm part of a team and I'm not proud of the work we're doing together, I will never participate at my full potential. Integrity. Have we conducted ourselves well? Integrity as a leader. Am I conducting myself well? Am I keeping myself in check? As a group or team leader, I would be asking myself, how often am I above the line in my leadership? Because that's leading with integrity. Accomplishment. Are we working in ways that we're actually making a difference? You'll remember last time I introduced to you the 3 top qualities that you all need to inspire in your group or team for high productivity. That comes from the work of Daniel Pink. Autonomy, mastery, and purpose. How aware are your group and team members on a very regular basis that the work that they do contributes to the larger purpose of what? We spent a lot of time on this last time. What's the purpose here? Why are they doing what they do?
So people live a better quality of life,
What people?
us employees as well as clients.
Us as employees as well as clients. We remember I worked with you with the mission and vision and purpose of this organization, which was right on task. And I asked John who came up with that. And I didn't.
It really wasn't me. It was a team effort.
So it was a team effort, but you may not have known that the organization on your website starts with why. And we start always with why. Well, companies that really innovate and function at a high level start with why. There's a whole book on that, start with why. And then we talk about the how. And then we talk about the what it is that we actually do. But if your employees know that they contribute in a positive way to the average American getting to have a vacation at an affordable price, that's great purpose. I'm signing up for that. That you provide that for other people. What are you having them sign up for? What are you having them invest their workday in? If they don't know, and we don't know when we're in the trenches of it, but we have to be reminded of it, and we have to be reminded of it by our team leader and manager. So, do I feel like I'm making a difference by providing people with vacations? You know, you've got to sell them on that. You've got to enroll them in that in order to get the most that you can get from them and their potential. Connection. Do we have relationships here that are important? We spend the majority of our adult lives in our workplace. Think about that. You spend the majority of your adult life in your workplace. This is one of the reasons why workplace culture matters so much and contributes so greatly to retention. People will leave their jobs if it is not a place that they feel comfortable in, that it's not a place they feel they can thrive in. If the culture is toxic and dysfunctional, we know this to be true. People don't quit their jobs because they hate the work. They tend to quit their jobs because the culture of the organization was toxic and they couldn't take it anymore. So, our workplace connections within our groups and teams, if there's a lot of conflict going on amongst and between group members, this really gets compromised. You're not going to succeed in the way that you possibly could if that were remedied or resolved. And finally, legacy. You know, do we live and work in ways that contribute? And that's very similar to accomplishment. What legacy do I want to leave behind as a working professional when I'm no longer working? What mark do I want to have made? What mark do we want to have made as a team? So these are markers of success. So check in with your team members. And you don't have to sit down and go back and gather them together and say, okay, let's talk about pride. let's talk about integrity. You don't have to talk to them about it quite in this way. But you can have team meetings where you talk at a meta level about what's going on here between us, amongst us. What do we need to clear up and clear away so that we can feel prideful, as if we are working in integrity, as if we have accomplished something, as if there is connection in meaningful ways and legacy, that we made a difference, we made an impact. If your team, this is a game-changing, important question, if your team could make just one change in order to thrive, what would it be? 2 minutes, talk amongst yourself. Don't think about it too much. What comes to mind first? If I could make one change in my group or team, what would it be? Did we talk in here last time about getting a wilted basil plant and bringing it into your office as an example?
If you need a wilted plant, I've got one.
But the analogy is really, really helpful. It's like, okay, here's the wilting one, and here's one that's who do we want to be? Right? So Lisa shared that if she could make one change to her team so that it would thrive, that change would be reducing, if not eliminating, negativity. That's a really good response, because she said she's got new team members. This is so critical if you've got new team members that are just like, hey, I'm here and I'm newly employed here, or, and they're just so excited. And then you've got other team members that are just whatever, like the energy is completely opposite. Negativity is a contagion. It is like a virus that lives inside of a team. And it will not take long before the vibrancy of those new team members will be pulled down. If they don't know better, because they don't have this information, we match energy. They will be pulled down and into that. And as a leader, it's despairing. Mm-hmm. Now, the fact that you recognize that and you see this happening, as many of you likely do, you're not only tasked with, we have to get things done. You're tasked with, I've got to manage that for them so that this doesn't continue. Any other examples? If you could change one thing, what would it be? Yes?
Viewing the glass half full instead of half empty. Viewing the positive first and not focusing on the negative.
Yeah. What are we doing well? What are we doing right? What are we doing good? And that grows out of mindset. So your mindset as the leader is also contagious. The leader doesn't just have, and individuals of the group or team, we all have mindsets. The word dynamic is like the group mindset. What is it? What is that mindset like? If it had its own sort of mind, what would it be? And if it's not productive and not healthy and not effective and not positive, whoa, as a team leader, I have a lot of work to do. And where do I start? With myself. I check in. What is my mindset? Someone else? Yes.
As you said earlier, just allowing time to be open with each other a little bit more than what we do. And I think a lot of times we think, oh, well, she's the general manager, so I'm not going to say anything to her. Or, maybe even day and evening managers let things fester rather than talking to each other. And then the one thing that I noticed the most is from an employee standpoint, from our team we feel like we put so many programs out there to allow them to give us ideas, but yet we always get on the survey that nobody wants to listen to my ideas. So again, it's because we're not open enough with each other to talk to each other face to face when I am at the office or, to their own manager.
Imagine a version of this training with them and for them that changes that. And you have this content. So as much as possible, even if you had a meeting once per month that was on working at a meta level about this team and just introducing a couple of these concepts, because you can change that. And what you're describing is not at all unusual. I see this everywhere.
And everybody has such good ideas
Yeah,
on all levels.
that's right. Yep. And so I want to create an environment where anyone feels free to offer those ideas. One more. Yes.
I think mine's more so of a comment. We have to be receptive to the idea of change. I think a lot of times we get stuck in our ways and we focus on what we've done in the past and we think it's always the right method. So in order for us to thrive with the change, we have to be able to change.
Yeah.
And I think that's something that a lot of individuals struggle with.
And it just starts with the willingness. I'm not sure what the change is going to look like, but I'm willing. I'm willing to try it on. I'm willing. This is why I was so excited, because oftentimes I'll go into organizations and I don't get this kind of feedback where you're sharing very specifically with me how you've been using some of this content in your groups or teams. So that shows me that so many of you have the willingness to change or to alter, or in some cases totally transform how you've been leading and managing. That's exciting. It's much easier for me to just keep doing the same thing over and over again. It's much more difficult for me. This is why I don't recommend blasting back into your offices. If you've been working with your group or team for a long time, you are working with a firmly entrenched dynamic. It's firmly entrenched. And so altering that is going to take time. Know this, if you forget everything I shared with you over the course of the last week, know that the dynamic is what it is because you've communicated your way into it. The only way to change it, to transform it, to repair it, to make it different, is to communicate yourself into something new. And that's what all of this is about. This is an interesting exercise because it would be interesting to hear from your own team members. You are inviting them to express just one thing that they would change so that they believe would make the team thrive. I was recently reading a book a colleague of mine wrote, and the book launches into this notion based on a study that he and his co-author did, that most executives, team leaders, and managers have an extremely inflated perception of their effectiveness as a leader and manager. And when you really ask those that they lead and manage how they experience their leader, that the results are shocking. But the leader and manager executive has no idea because they never asked. Never assume that the way you're leading and managing is effective just because it produces a certain outcome. It might produce a certain outcome because your team members are terrified of you. Or they feel bullied into that particular direction. Never, ever base your productivity or outcome on, or your ideas about your effectiveness on what gets produced. Base it on the process through which it was produced and the dynamic that is alive and thriving in your team, alive, living in your team. What does it mean to go meta? Go meta. And you know what? Use this terminology. You know what, Candy? You and I are going to have a conversation. We're going to go meta. We're going to talk about how we talk to each other. I'm just using you as an example. Take the temperature of your team. Just like we say this. This is something we hear in marital therapy. Take the temperature of your relationship. How does this feel? How does it feel to be part of this? Have challenging conversations. Don't be afraid to go there. As a leader or manager, invite feedback. And if it's not delivered in a way, for example, if I invite feedback and it's delivered below the belt, then I know my team members need some training in above the line communication. That's okay. But have those challenging conversations. Seek feedback when you need it, not only from those you lead, but from other people here, colleagues that work at your level. How do you see me? Tell me something about my management style that you really admire. Tell me something about my management leadership style that you think I could tweak or change. Going meta when a team has a challenge. Listen to this very, very carefully. This is in your handout, but this is circle this question. As a leader, how can I best handle this particular situation that we're in? Let's say you've got team members that are bickering. Remember those roles we went through, those really disruptive, dysfunctional, toxic roles that team members tend to take on. If you've got that happening in your group, we all do. Ask yourself, how can I best handle this situation in a way that preserves the team dynamic that we have so carefully created? Especially if it's one that you've carefully created so that you can thrive. Ideally, this kind of training would happen when people are beginning to form their teams. You've already been leading teams for long periods of time. Some of you very large teams. The larger the team, the more complicated the dynamic. So I really do applaud you for the work that you do, because you're not just focused on task, outcome, product. You're tasked with managing the dynamic that lives in your team. So how do I navigate myself or best handle myself as a leader when there's a challenge in our team and I really want to preserve the dynamic that we have created together, especially if we've worked really hard to create a team that thrives? So it's not enough to create a great team dynamic. You have to protect and you have to preserve it, because it will get threatened when people start acting out, when people start moving into or shifting into negative roles. Okay? So this is an important question. 7-day rule. As a leader, I would never go 7 days without asking myself this question: is this group thriving? If so, how? How are we thriving? Focusing on the good. What are we doing really well? What are we doing really right? What is working for us? Because what's working for our team isn't necessarily going to work for the team that's sitting at the other table, because it's comprised of different people. And if not, what needs to change? But only ask these questions if you're sitting here as a leader and you want to lift your team out of survival mode, the wilted basil plant, into a state of thriving. But don't let 7 days go. I don't know how often you do evaluations here. In many corporations, evaluations, assessments are done once per year, strictly from the perspective of time. We don't have time to do quarterlies. But as someone who leads a team, a year is too long to touch in. What's your general rule around that?
Annual assessments.
Annual for the team leaders to their group members?
Oh, marketing, you
Depends
guys.
upon
Do it a
the
little
team.
more than that.
Depends upon the
Oh,
team.
yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Marketing
QARs
isn't-
and SDSRs get quarterly.
Yeah.
CX renewed monthly.
Is there a reason for that?
Just to find out what the team needed. if
Is
they
that
needed
customer
more.
service?
Yeah. Customer
I'm learning the
service.
lingo here. Yeah.
Yeah, so that we could find out from them what they needed from us to be excellent in the role, and then also to tell them little corrections along the way because it's a newer department.
Okay, you just said something that, I could leave right now. You don't need me here. It's really important. What do you need? I'm checking in with you. I'm checking in with this team to see what you need from me so that you can perform at the level of excellence. That's what you just said. That's a game changer because mostly it's the opposite. I'm wondering as a team member, what do I need to do here for my boss, for my leader, in order to show that I'm performing at an excellent level versus she is inviting me. She's inviting me to speak what I need. And that doesn't mean I need more ink pens. That might mean, what is your first name?
Valerie.
Valerie, you know what I need? I need, along the way, it really works for me to be acknowledged for really small victories. And I need to be able to say that to you. Go back to those needs. Teach your team the needs, those human needs. Ask them to identify what are your top 2 or 3 human needs. Valerie, along the way, I need to know that I have job security. Like, wouldn't that help her to know that about me? If she wants to get the best from me, and if she wants me to be the best team member possible, knowing very specifically, this is what really lights a fire under Christine's butt. This is what really motivates her. You know what, Valerie? What I need to operate at a really excellent level is I need more challenges. I'm starting to feel bored in my role. I think I told you the story about someone during one of these trainings who pulled me aside and said, I'm thinking of quitting this job. I'm not being challenged. And I said, you're talking to the wrong person. I get it. But don't quit your job before having a conversation with your leader about the fact that you don't feel challenged. Because your job is salvageable if they can challenge you. And the reason I gave that example, if you remember, is what really lights a fire under our butts are opportunities where we feel autonomous. My team and my leader trusts me to make decisions, and we feel that we've mastered something. I'm doing work, and I'm seeing that I'm growing and changing, and I'm mastering a particular skill, and I'm known in the organization as the go-to person for that. We feel really good about our work when we feel we're masterful at it. And then purpose. I have to know that what I'm doing is serving a larger purpose beyond the paycheck I receive every 2 weeks. So there are certain things along the way. There's probably 3 to 5 slides or points that I've made along the way in this 3-week journey with you that are true game changers. Like the things if you were only to remember those 3 to 5 things, would work in a transformational way if you're willing to start keeping these things in mind and actually utilizing some of the principles. Let me just check the time. Okay, a couple of other things before we adjourn, but don't wait longer than 7 days. Don't wait 6 months. Don't wait for the year mark to ask yourself these questions first. And then ask these questions of your team as well. Not necessarily every 7 days, but even invite them to ask these questions of themselves. How do I inspire excellence? Remember, you are you're 100% responsible. 100% responsible for how you show up as the leader of your team. It's no one else's responsibility. And if you show up badly and if you show up poorly, it's no one else's fault. It's not the fault of your team members. It's not the fault of Sundance Vacations as an organization. It is on you. If you're in this role, own the role, or you ought not be in it. Or it's going to be miserable to be in it. 100% responsible. That means that I walk my talk. If you like the content that was here and you're going back and you're sharing it with your group or team, if Lisa wants to eliminate or diminish the presence of negativity in her team, she's got to walk that talk. And it begins with her, because they won't believe her and they won't invest in reducing. Yeah? What did you do?
I said I wrote that as we were talking about that. Lead by example and practice what I preach.
Lead by example here means in my verbals, in my nonverbals, in my paraverbals. Please remember this. We attend to about 7% of what people actually say, the words coming out of their mouth. 7%. The majority of our attention is on what are called the paraverbals and the nonverbals. What you're saying with your body can be totally contradictory to the words that are spilling out of your mouth. And paraverbal refers to how you're saying it, your tone, the tone of your voice, the rate at which you speak. All of these things that we feel, that others feel. So if I want to show up as an inspiring leader, and I've just listened to the latest Tony Robbins podcast on empowerment in business, and I come in and I'm sharing all that information, but I am not conveying that information in my nonverbals and in my paraverbals, you are not going to believe me. And what do we know is the number one fundamental principle of a healthy, functioning team? It's one word.
Trust.
Trust. If that's absent, you're stuck. You're in the ditch. Or the entire team will just dismantle. Embody your leadership. It's not just in the words you speak. It's how you show up. It's the energy you bring. If I commit to staying above the line, and I am a human being and I can go above and below the line, up and down within a 5-minute period of time, but at least I know it. And at least I have the ability to self-correct. Watch the video at least 10 times. Study your handout. If you make a commitment to communicating from above the line, it will not just change your performance as a leader, it will change your most important, significant interpersonal relationships. It will change your parenting, it will change your marriage. It's that powerful. And it's that rare. And when you are in the presence of a person who predominantly communicates from above the line, you know it. Because you feel it. And you want it. And you have everything you need now to have that and to live that. Remember, these are the outcomes of living and speaking and communicating from above the line and applying the principles that I shared with you over the course of the last 3 weeks. You will create, or you will restore to your team a deep sense of trust. You will create a team climate where connection and collaboration are the rule rather than the exception. If trust is there, if collaboration is there, then I know creativity can freely flow. Creativity cannot happen in the mind of a person who is stressed out, afraid, intimidated, bullied, or threatened in their team. It doesn't happen. You cannot be creative in a mind where there's a lot of stress hormone living. It's like the brain marinating in stress hormone, cannot be creative. It won't happen. Take 100% responsibility for how your team feels. Going back to all that original content during our first week together, where we talked about what is team climate and how do we create it. Remember those 3 principles from Daniel Pink. You light a fire under everyone's butt when you can motivate through autonomy, giving them opportunities for mastery, and always reminding them of their purpose, why they're here. You can have an entire team meeting, an inspiring team meeting, where you really drill down on why you're here. This is why the work that you do here matters to our clients. Remember, never forget, leadership is a lot of things, but you will totally miss the boat. You will not be effective. You will never run a team or manage a team that's going to reach its full potential if you don't understand the truth of this last statement that is on this slide, which is leadership is relationship. It is relationship. It is the capacity to cultivate and to sustain and to repair if things break down or fall apart, and if necessary, it is the capacity to transform relationship through communication. You have team group problems, you communicated yourself into them. You want to create change and transformation, you communicate yourself out of those issues. We cannot talk about groups or teams or relationship absent communication. Never forget the 5 S's. Fundamentally, every group member, every person on your team, yourself included, every person in this organization wants to know the following. Am I safe? Am I valued here? Am I supported here? Am I a part of something here? And can I succeed here? And I know, because the first time I visited here, I talked about this, the feng shui of the place, the colors on the wall, walking down the hallways, looking into your offices, seeing toys and games, that there is a vitality in this organization, and there is a sense of overall sense of friendliness, even a family energy here that really supports these 5 S's, whether it was intentional or not. You've done this. Now, is that happening in the atmosphere of my team? So if you are working with the 5 S's in your team and you have team members saying, no, I don't feel safe to share my ideas. I don't feel safe to give feedback. I don't feel safe to have difficult conversations. So let these be a North Star of sorts if you want to take your team out of surviving and into thriving. Okay. I'm going to stop here because I feel that it's a good place to stop. Any questions? I want to give you one more tool. Take that back. For those of you who are going to do some goal setting, do you know about GROW? GROW, the acronym GROW. You'll see it in your handout. I'll walk you through it really quickly. But for those of you, we're still in January. If you're doing any kind of goal setting in your group, and you can also apply GROW to your own self. Okay? It's the acronym GROW. I was working with this just the other day on a place in my life where I'm feeling stuck, a project that I'm working on. So I guide myself through GROW. Gee, what is my goal here? And imagine using this in your team. What's our goal? R, this is an important one. What is my current reality? Why is this one really important? What is the current reality here?
You have to understand it before you can make any changes.
I have to know where I'm at. This is like the person who says, I want to lose 10 pounds, but won't get on the scale to see where they're at. I must know where I'm at in order for me to get to where I want to go. It's mind-boggling to me that people who work with setting goals fail to do assess very honestly, and maybe the current reality, we want a team that thrives, and maybe the current reality is that our basil plant is 5 minutes away from death. We need to know that, because if I know that that's where we're at, we're in that wilted survival state, at least I can set an appropriate goal. What options exist? What options exist for me to make a change or for me to reach that goal? And the other part of the O is what obstacles are in the way of that? And I love W. What is the way forward? What is the way forward? And what does a win look like for us? If we get to the end of this process, what does our win look like? This is a wonderful acronym that anyone can latch onto. It is something that you can use for yourself in your own life, and it's certainly one that you can use as a guide in team meetings. All right. There's never enough time. So we began our journey with what is the distinction between a group that's thriving or surviving and one that's thriving. We spent a lot of time looking at this notion of climate. In our 2 hours last time, we got very, very specific on roles that are healthy and functional and help you thrive, and team roles that are dysfunctional, unhealthy, and will sabotage the efforts of a team. And we also started looking at how do we best understand others that we're leading. And if we have a sense of what our team members' top needs are, and we can communicate and relate to those needs, we can create a team environment where team members feel really supported, really excited, really connected to the purpose of the organization, really invested, and really comfortable owning their place in your team. The teams that you lead do not belong to Sundance Vacation. They belong to your team members. And you want your team members to take some ownership and to know that how they show up when they come to work, how they show up when you're gathering together to work together, plays a big role on what ends up happening and how productive you are and how successful you are. But you all are the navigators of that ship. So lead to inspire, lead to thrive, and lead from that place where you never forget that your leadership is about cultivating good relationships. Stay awake, stay mindful to all of this.